Testing. Well, I think I got it going. Testing. 1, 2, 3. Bear with me for a second. That was pretty obnoxious. Hey Laura, thanks for the sound check. I had some problems with my. Hey Bob, welcome to the stream. I had some problems with my XSplit this time. It tried to update and ran out of space and locked up everything. So I'm finally online, an hour or something late. But I think I finally deleted enough stuff to make room for the update, and it went through finally. So sorry I'm late. Hey Pam, how's Pam doing today? Better late than never, I guess. I got nothing today, so throw some questions at me so I can find something to chatter on about for 40 minutes. What's going on with you guys, fish? I'm in the midst of trying to do some major water changes. Hey, Mr. B, welcome to the stream. Shared out on FishTuber's notification. Thank you. Looks like my stream health is not very good. I'm not sure what the heck's going. Well, it says healthy now, but it's showing orange. I'm not sure, guys. Like I said, the update didn't work right. It locked everything up. Yeah. No, it's just giving me orange instead of green. I'm trying to do some. Hey Haley, welcome to the stream. I'm trying to do some egg down the wormhole. Welcome to the stream. Yeah, I'm an hour late. Hey Joseph, welcome to the stream. Joseph, I guess you're not going to Peru this time, huh? I think Corey and Dean are doing the river trip that Michael was talking about beforehand. I had so much trouble in Peru walking those rocks, and when we got to that last creek, I got stuck in that mud trying to go across the creek right at the very beginning. I stepped off into that mud and went up over my knee in it. And yeah, it was so hard for me to get my foot and my shoe back out of that mud. I went right up to where my camera was just about dragging the water. I had my camera on my neck, and I went in so deep that I just about went up to the going to Aquashell and Aquatic Experience. Yeah. The stories that I heard through Dean and through Michael about the mud that they wade through, the mud that they wade through on that river journey just really made me realize that I'm just not physically in good enough shape to do that. That I would be so exhausted from the time just walking where they were going that I wouldn't be any good for anything when I got there. So I just really don't think the river cruise is probably a good idea for me. I just better off staying the heck out of that. So what's going on with you guys today? Like I said, I'm late. I ran into a space issue trying to update XSplit. Too much mud on the Amazon. Yeah. Well, that last day, after I finally got myself extracted myself from the mud, you guys had gone on, so I just went and sat down on a log and started taking pictures, and I did a couple of videos just because I knew I wasn't gonna. I'm sorry I missed the Cayman and missed catching fish with you guys further upstream. Corey said it did get better after a while, that it got sandier the further you went in, but that just extracting my leg from that first step into the mud was such a nightmare, and I was so exhausted when I finally got out and got back up on the bank that I just sat down and waited on the boat for you guys to come back. I got a lot of good pictures. You can see quite a few of them. That's one right there from me sitting on the boat looking around instead of being in the creek with you guys. Yeah, there were lots of farewell, huh? You guys brought back way more fish than I expected from how small a creek it was, but I guess the water was just low. But that's what all this little section of pictures are, is me sitting on the bank, not walking down the stream with you guys. I've been kind of reliving Peru the last couple of weeks. I've gone back and looked at some of the videos. It really was a remarkable journey. It really was something that really swung my head around as far as thinking about what fish habitat really looked like and what the fish were actually living in. Yeah, there was lots of leaves. I watched a video from Freshwater Exotics. Freshwater Exotics has been around for a long time. It's a fish shipper. They get fish in and ship them out, and their quality is excellent, but their prices have always been kind of high. You know, if you really want excellent quality and you don't mind paying a little more, then I would highly recommend Freshwater Exotics. But they did a fish collecting trip in the upper Amazon, and I watched their video the other day, the last one that they came out with. It's the first one where they actually go out, and they didn't actually collect. What they did was caught and released because they weren't licensed to collect. So the guys that were with them were actually collecting, and they were watching them catch them and catching some, but they couldn't keep anything they caught. Yeah, Joseph, the rain was just, it was just perfect. I mean, I was already exhausted by the time we got to that point. Getting down in the river and pushing that boat off that sand barge was so exhausting to me that I was already exhausted, and then we got to blow for a minute, and then I got stuck in the mud and getting my leg back out. I was so tired. My back was killing me. Both of my legs were shaking because of the strain that we'd put them under, and so I just sat on the boat. Basically, I acquiesced to my condition and just tried to enjoy where I was as much as I could. It rained twice before you guys got back. I don't know whether you guys got any rain up the creek or not, but it rained twice for like a second or two. And then on the way back, by the time you guys got back and got down off that bank and across all that wood, and we got everything loaded, it just opened up and poured. I was glad that I had my waterproof bag, but my cigarette pack of cigarettes in my pocket just got trashed, and Michael had his iPhone in his hat, and it got trashed too. Yeah, I can't believe it either. I was happy that I had that. My bag wasn't waterproof, but it came with like a bag to put around it. And so after it had rained already, yeah, Michael lost his phone. After it had rained already, I had already put my bag. I mean, I was getting my camera out and taking shots, but I was I was ready for it to rain on us. But anyway, watching that freshwater exotics um, video, and basically they just pulled up to a sandbar that had a bunch of logs on it that were also in the water, and they were basically just pictures under the water. It was just sand and those logs. That's all the habitat those fish were living in. And basically they were just breaking off hunks of the logs, pulling them up, opening the logs up, and pulling the catfish out of the logs. So, the habitat that these fish live in the wild, doesn't look anything like aquascaping, doesn't look anything like, it's basically just dead wood, whatever the substrate is, sand or clay or mud, and maybe dead leaves. There's just nothing in that area of South America in the water other than dead stuff and the fish themselves and the substrate that they're all sitting on. So it's I think it's good for people to see where they're catching the fish, where the fish are actually living, if they are interested in trying to find a, a biotope looking aquarium setup that actually mimics the habitat where the fish live. It's just not all these plants and little sticks and beautiful rocks and all that stuff. I mean, that stuff is wonderful. It's gorgeous, aquascaping. I saw that vid and it struck me that the fish had was a constant flow of fresh water, not something we can provide in a tank setting. And you're exactly right, Bob. The amount of water that flows over those fish is 2, 3, 400 times what we can provide. So it's important that we do water changes. It's important that we do lots of water changes and that we continually refresh that water, because you're right. Until when the dry season comes and the water levels drop everywhere, then the fish that are in smaller streams and little lakes off of the main river that get stuck in those, then they're in the kind of water that we have in our tanks. But most of the time they are out in the main flow and they are getting a lot more water flow across them than we really can provide in a tank. I suppose if you had a great big giant pool like Big Rich's pool at Ohio Fish Rescue, then you're getting on the order of the kind of water flow that fish are really used to in the wild. But I really enjoyed Peru. I can't afford to do things like that very often or maybe never again, but I thoroughly enjoyed every minute of it. Hey, Aquarium Cop, welcome to the stream, man. I'm just basically rambling and I'm highly late today. I couldn't tell that anyone else was streaming. It wasn't showing me any notice of Mark Shrimp Tanks or anybody else streaming, so I went ahead and ran late. I was about an hour late, well, an hour right now. I started at my normal time, but my XSplit tried to update, some kind of big update, and it locked up everything because there wasn't enough space left on my computer for it to download everything. But this is pretty much a year ago that we were in Peru, so I've been kind of rehashing it in my mind, and that's one of the great things about YouTube is that we can mount all these videos and we can go back and look at them later. It's like a diary almost in some ways, because I've been going back and looking at other people's. Joseph has some great video and Corey has some great video. Dean didn't really put up much video other than just like Aquarium Cop says, Dwayne, I'm pretty much subscribed to most and I don't see anyone live. Well, if you're working a regular schedule and you have a family or kids or a wife to take care of, it's pretty easy to not catch people live. If you've got anything going on in your life, then it's pretty easy to not be around when others are streaming. I catch a lot. My back is in really bad shape, and so I've got a computer chair that really fits my back well, and so I spend a lot of time in this chair trying to keep from throwing my back out and suffering. Hold on a second. Sorry. Thought somebody was at the door. Joseph says, I think my Peru video is some of my personal favorite content of my own. Those were some nice memories. I could live there. Yeah, I've thought about it. Terry's Tropical Tanks, welcome to the stream. Found a dried up Denison barb on the basement floor today. 4 months of grow out down the drain. Man, I feel for you on that one. I've never done Denison barbs. They're gorgeous fish, and I've always thought about keeping. Aquarium Cop says I put up a new video on mine silly channel. It's Aquarium Cop. I sleep when all prime time is streaming. Oh well. Well, we appreciate what you can give us. Terry, I've had um, Joseph has killifish fry in a cup on his nightstand. Yep, you are single, Joseph. Terry, I have had fish jump before. It's a good idea to cover your tanks. If you have any inkling that the fish you have might jump, then I always try to cover my tanks. Even if it's not a great cover, like I've got uh, light diffuser plastic, the thin plastic with the bumps on it that you use in a 4 foot fixture, a fluorescent fixture, and I just broke it to fit, cut it and broke it to fit my tank and my air lines and my hang-on back filter, and I put that over my Burjukinas that I got from Peru, because the bigger of the two cichlids that I've got has basically driven, when we had them in the holding tanks in Peru, Joseph came in one morning and said, Dwayne, three of your cichlids have jumped the tank. Well, I've come to figure out that this larger fish, I hope it's a female, but I'm not sure that it is. It may be, I may have two males. It's just really hard for me to tell. And it had driven the other fish out of the tank, its own species, but it had harassed them so badly that it made them literally jump out of the tank. Hey, Kent's Fish, welcome to the stream. Looks like Bob had you still have 3 pairs of the Apistos, Joseph? That's awesome. Hey, Dan Slee, welcome to the stream. Um, Bob's saying, must be the moon. I found one of the first fish I cycled my first marine tank with in January on the floor last night. A Molly Miller. She jumped while being harassed by a lawnmower blenny. Yeah, it's hard to cover your tanks. I'm the first one here to recognize that it's a pain in the butt. But even if you just use egg crate diffuser, the square hatch stuff, and cut it to fit the top of your tank, you'll get a lot better. Joseph's breeding his F1 generation of blue tetras, and you really managed to knock those blue tetras out of the park. I just it helps a lot on evaporation when you do cover a tank with glass. And I have a few of those old school glass covers that I use on several different tanks. And you will get a lot less evaporation, and the water will stay in the tank a lot longer if it is covered. But there are certain kinds of fish that are just really hard to keep in a tank. They'll jump out of the smallest little, slice that's beside where your intake from your hang-on back filter comes up. They'll jump out of where the hang-on back filter flows back in. They find a way. And if you've got something that's like Haley's rope fish, they're going to climb out. You don't even have to give them spot to jump out. They'll push the lid up. They'll do anything they can to get out. Fish, fish are amazingly able to get out of situations. I've seen people with heavy bricks on their glass lids just because the fish that they've got will fight their way out of the tank if they don't. If you don't believe your fish can get out of your tank, I would tell you to go watch some of the videos on YouTube about octopuses escaping their tanks. They get out in ways that you just can't possibly imagine. Yeah, you're right, Joseph. Dan's saying F1 and F1 should be interesting to see what pops out since recessives are possible. Yeah. Well, Joseph started out with a pretty good gene pool. I'm not sure because we caught those blue tetras at a couple of different places. Of course, we had like 150 of them, and I think we ended up with like 40 alive, something like that. And well, killifish in the wild, they they are made to jump from puddle to puddle, so you know they're gonna jump. And eels are another one of those creatures that's just gonna get out no matter what you do, pretty much. You almost have to silicone all the gaps to keep something like an eel in. Eel, ropefish, morays, all that kind of stuff is going to get out. You know, most fish, if you just keep the water level low enough, they won't really be able to jump out of a tank. And as long as there's, like 3 or 4 inches for them to jump up in the air, but some of them will. Oh, so the ones you got were what Michael sent when he brought them back? Bob says his killies will jump out of the tank when he's feeding them. Jumping to the food, yeah. Yep, fish are full of wild caught surprises. You can tank raise them, but they've still got wild stuff in them. So you're always going to be dealing with something surprising from almost every fish you can keep in your tanks. Even guppies and mollies and stuff like that will do surprising things. You just don't think that they're capable of it, and boom, the next thing you know, you've got dead fish on the floor for days. Plecos, um, catfish. Catfish will do the same darn thing. I used to have wood cats, ninja cats, and a lot of those cats that they were showing on freshwater exotics were wood cats. A lot of them were, and those things would jump. I'd never see them, and then I'd come in because they always stay hidden, and then I'd come in one morning or one night, and they'd be on the floor. It was like you never see them, and then when they come out, they get spooked so easy, they jump right out of the tank. Hooker moss. I don't know, I don't recognize hooker moss. I've got Christmas moss, I've got Java moss, I've got Uh, Tang. I've got about 4 different kinds of moss. Hooker K. It's fuzzy like a pipe cleaner, huh? Yeah, a lot of that moss is like that. Christmas moss is kind of like that, only I'm guessing it doesn't go quite as tall. I don't run in the same circles as Dan and Joseph do. Yeah, that's true. um, there are several guys on uh, oh, what the heck is the name of that now? Online that sell all kinds of different moss. A couple of them are Chinese, I think, and they smuggled all kinds of uh, weird off the wall moss out of China and some from Japan. And, they're not supposed to take that stuff out of the country, or they're not supposed to bring it into the country. But back in the day, you could get away with doing stuff like that. In the 70s and the 80s, you could ship stuff like moss all over the world and nobody really thought anything about it. If it would survive how long it took to get shipped, then you could pretty much have it. And it's only been in the last 20 years or so that you've been able to try to ship stuff and have it held up by moss is really hard to identify, Bob. You'd almost have to give him a microscope look at it, probably, or just a really super clear picture, unless it's one of those really weird mosses that, because all the different kinds of moss, phyllo moss, Christmas moss, all of those mosses are so similar. It's just little tiny differences from appearance. I mean, it may be way different when it gets down to dissecting and stuff like that. It's close up and grown upside down off the hang on back lip, a large mass of it. I've got some stuff on my 110-gallon tank. I have a one of my, I've always loved to put power head outlets in the air and let them spray all the way across the tank and splash off the front or the side of the tank. I don't know why, but that's always been something I've done just naturally. It just occurred to me a long time ago, and I have glass on the tank on that side, but around all the edges of the glass in the front, where that water's splashing all the time, something's growing up out of the top of the. It's it's on top of the glass, but it's getting water from under the glass where the water's kind of pooling up. So it lives on the edges of my glass all the way around. And if it grows out too far, it dries up and quits growing in that direction. The dogs were a bit scary in Peru. uh, yeah, it was. There were a couple of times when bigger dogs were running loose and acting all wild, but they kind of. I've always loved large dogs and always felt a real affinity for large dogs, so I'm not too afraid of them. Yeah, Dan Slee's saying pretty much the same thing I did. It's hard to tell. And in every different situation, something's going to grow differently, you know? It's like if this plant is in this situation, it'll grow like this. If it's in that situation, it'll grow like that. You almost can't tell, you know? The same plant looks completely different if it's slightly immersed. Yeah, Terry, that's the one that Joseph and I were talking about. Um, we went on the last day. Felix, who was our guide, he pops up in a picture here wearing a pair of sunglasses. Not Dean. Dean's got sunglasses on too, but yeah, Dan, I'm pretty sure that the actual true identification of moss is really difficult. Um, we on the last day, Felix said, "Okay, I'm going to take you to my property," and he has a big stretch of land that's on a river. And hey, Fish Tropics, welcome to the stream, man. Um, he took us to his parents had have a like a little store and restaurant, and there's a lot of wood cutting there. The buildings you see right in that picture are across the river, and the trucks come from that direction and take that barge right there that you can see back over to this side, and this side is where they cut and mill the lumber, and that's where Felix's land was on one side of the road, and on the other side of the road, I guess it's someone that has that wood timber cutting stuff going on, and the boats were all pulled up there that you can see. That golden shower. There's Corey and Dean down by the river because we had gotten out there and I was taking pictures. And so there's some of the wood that was being cut that they were stacking up, and then the trucks were carrying it off once it was all cut. And Felix took us down to the river, and the river is really big. It's a big river, but there's only like one channel in it that's very deep. There's a lot of silt in it, a lot of sand in it. The kids on the other side were all down in, about halfway out into the water, and they were basically just knee deep where they were all the way halfway out into the river where they were swimming. And so basically, instead of having a normal motor on the back, they have those pole motors like that. So, oh, your video shows us getting stuck too. Well, I put my camera up because we had to get out and push. So I didn't really, and you cut your foot getting out barefoot, I remember. Cut your foot on a glass bottle. I thought, oh no, Joseph's going to be out of action now. But I was the one that was out of action then. I was exhausted. But they used that long pole with the prop on the end of it. Sharp rock, okay. They use that long pole with the prop on the end of it so that they can use that propulsion in really shallow water, which is exactly what we tried to do, was go downriver and then across where we were heading was. But to get there, we had to get out into the channel, go up where those trucks cross at, because those trucks, the barge needs to be able to get them across. So there's a little channel right where the barge is, and we tried to go up to that and then get close to the bank on the other side where there was another little deeper channel. And then we were going to go down the river on that side, get to the creek where we were going, and pull up, and then come back after we got done. Well, we got stuck on the sand barge trying to get across. And, it was probably only like a foot deep. And it was basically a great big sand bank where the silt from the river gets pushed up, and probably where they run the barge out there and use a big piece of equipment to reach down there and dredge out that so they can keep bringing their trucks back across. So when they dredge it out, it all sits up on one side, and then the river washes it down, making that bank even deeper and deeper until the point where it's just, inches basically in places under the water. And we, of course, got stuck right on it. We all got off. We all tried to push. We tried to push one way, and that didn't work. We tried to push back off of the bank, and that didn't work. There was like 6 kids all swimming, and I say kids. They were probably in their, late teens, most of them. And they were pretty big. And we got them to come over and help us push. And we still didn't get off of there. We finally had to take logs or boards and get under the back end and keep lifting the back end and pushing. Okay, Joseph's got the full story of that. I guess he was still filming, but I wasn't. I stuck my camera in the bag and I got in the river, so I was afraid I was going to end up in hip-deep water and get my camera wet. I guess Corey's probably got it right. You just need to take a waterproof phone with a really good camera in it and a lot of room, and just Dan wants to someday do a Sulawesi trip similar to our trip to Peru. I'm sure they're probably anacondas were suiting up for dinner. I'm not sure that we ever saw a snake. Joseph left his camera running and jumped in the river. Well, it was quite an experience. But needless to say, I was utterly trashed by the time we got to the creek. And after we got out and got started, everybody went across the creek and then went up further in. And when I tried to cross the creek, I got so stuck in the mud and was so exhausted trying to get my leg out that was as far as I went. I clambered my butt back up on the bank and I sat down and started filming because I knew I wasn't going any further in. Taking pictures. All right, guys, we're rolling up on 45 minutes here. I've been late. I got started late today. Instead of 2:45, it was like 3:30. But if you've got any questions you want to get answered, if I can answer them, I'll be glad to have the topic to talk about. That in China, Taiwan, Hong Kong for shrimp environments. Dan, as far as China and Hong Kong go, I would tell you to go as soon as you can, because the habitat where they come from naturally is probably disappearing as we speak. China is one of the worst polluters in the world because the people are just now reaching the point where they can have giant cities, and they still use a lot of coal to do their home cooking and home heating with. And there's just a lot of pollution going on in China. And there's just not a lot of control of it. Yeah, the islands too. Well, Hong Kong is so crowded. There's so many people there. Maybe going to Hong Kong right now isn't a good idea. Looking at all the protests and all the stuff that's going on, they they got given back to China. Basically, the Hong Kong lease ran out. I think they had it for 99 years, and it finally ran out, and finally China's trying to take them back again. So they're going through some real changes in that part of the world right now, and an awful lot of people are starting to realize just how bad it could be. You know, they're using extradition so that somebody does something wrong to them in Hong Kong, they can ship you over to mainland China, and you'll pretty much just disappear in the government bowels there. Yeah. People are, you know, as a species, human beings, because we live and die so quickly, our memories aren't very long. You know, about 2 or 3 generations, we tend to just completely forget what happened 100 years ago. You know, and we repeat the same mistakes over and over and over again because we choose not to look at the past and realize what can happen in the future. And we're just we're we were we were more designed to react to a bear in a cave than to long-term things. So our basic nature is not so good at remembering things that happened before and using that to decide how we're going to act in the future, or what we will do and what we won't do, what we will put up with, what we won't put up with. We keep getting sucked back into the same old uh, nationalisms and isms of all different sorts, and all the problems that come from those. You know, and who's to say what's best or right or wrong? It's just, it always seems like it's best when things come down on the side of personal freedom, personal ability to decide your own fate, to decide as even a group your fate. Those things are always, almost always, the best way to go about living together as human beings. And anytime you start putting someone in charge in such a way that there are no safeguards for how much power they grab, you end up with a living situation that degrades and degrades and degrades and degrades. And you know, the famous saw is, um, they came for X, Y, and Z, and I didn't say anything. And they came for A, B, and C, and I didn't say anything. And now they're coming for me, and no one else is saying anything. Well, if if you're not willing to fight for your freedom, if you're not willing to stand up to totalitarianism, if you're not willing to thumb your thumb in the eye of dictatorships or oligarchies, then you pretty much get what you deserve, you know. And sometimes people have to learn the hard way. They have to put their hand up on that stove burner to find out what's going to happen when they touch it. But it's a lot easier, it's a lot better in the long run to not learn that way, to not, to learn by someone else telling you. When I was little, I touched that stove burner and it just burnt the hell out of me. Well, if you can learn that without having to put your hand on the burner and get burnt, you're going to be miles ahead of other people. And somehow as a species, we need to learn that and not lose it over the generations. We need to recognize what's really bad and not let ourselves get dragged down into that mire every 30 or 60 or 100 years over and over again. But I'm not sure that's ever going to happen. I'm not sure that mankind is ever going to be thoughtful enough to avoid those pitfalls. Okay, there's my roundabout political rant. All right, guys, I'm going to end this a little early. I'm sorry I was so late, but I appreciate the fact that you've taken some of your time out on Saturday to spend here with us. And I hope you have good luck with your fish. I hope you manage to both enjoy and care for well your fish. I think both of those things go hand in hand, because it's pretty hard to enjoy fish that are really sick. So I'm going to shut it down. Yes, I agree wholeheartedly, Dan. Everybody have a great day.